discovery requests that we've made from the Commonwealth, in which there's been significant exculpatory information provided. And we think will be very significant during the course of this trial, which we anticipate will be in sometime in October. So that's the status of the case.
A lot of other troopers and supervisors are pleading guilty
Right.
to federal charges.
Right.
Are you considering a guilty plea for your clients?
Not in the least. And one of the things that's different, John, as I said before at the initial arraignment, is that these cases are different in the sense that there is no allegation of fictitious ghost tickets being written. What it comes down to is the allegations that the clients, my clients, did not work the entire 4 hours. And the Commonwealth is basing that upon information related to transponders and information from GPS and some other sources. And it's been well known that there's many issues with the radio system within the state police. It's been under review, and I'm sure that that's going to be part of our defense in the future.
Are you going to contend that they weren't required to work their entire shifts on these overtime?
No, that's not. The contention isn't that. But part of what's interesting here is that this program was established in 1997, or its predecessor, and throughout the past, literally 20 years, there have been different changes that have been required or met by the department that have never been put into writing. For instance, supervisors, those holding the rank of lieutenant, were never formally required to write tickets. And a part of their responsibilities was to supervise. And what's unique about this is that the turnpike's like 130 miles long. So you could have somebody who is the lieutenant supervising authority in Weston, who's responsible for supervising people literally 70 miles away in Westfield, in Charlton. So you have one lieutenant on a 4-hour shift who's responsible for supervising officers that are literally 100 miles away from them. So that's, since this has come to light, the department has changed that because it placed a responsibility that was impossible to acquire. There's also clear evidence that even though it wasn't in writing, that troopers, for their own safety and for the safety of the people driving at 70, 80 miles an hour on the turnpike, were not responsible for writing tickets during inclement weather, whether it was rain, snow, sleet, anything like that. And if you know what's the breadth of the turnpike, and you could be like today, there's 6 inches of snow in the Berkshires, and there's nothing here in Boston. But if there was inclement weather, they're not responsible for writing tickets. And that's one of the things for the safety reasons. Never put in writing, but that's part of the process that it was in place for all my clients as well as the other individuals. So there's a distinction between those individuals who have pled guilty, who apparently were accused of and have accepted responsibility for writing ghost tickets. That's not the allegation here. And it's a very different kind of case. And if anybody knows anything about either one of these individuals, John Gelino or David Keefe, they are extremely well thought of within the department, within their peers, within their families. They have been honorable, decent people for their entire careers with the state police. But people get caught up in situations like this, and obviously it's going to have to go to a trial, and it will.
Is it your contention that both your clients, the 2 lieutenants, have worked there in all the entire amount of these shifts?
You will never
in all the cases cited by the Commonwealth?
You will never find a shift in which they did not respond to. What are the other unwritten rules within the department is that if there was inclement weather, you had to be on call. And that means you had to respond if there was an event of an emergency. So you technically may not have been at work, but you certainly had the responsibility of being available, being in your uniform, and being able to respond. Another issue that people aren't aware of is that lieutenants within the state police are normally, especially on the turnpike, are issued unmarked cars. So when they would do patrols or do these air patrols, they would take an unused cruiser fully marked cruiser, which has much better lighting sources and much better protection for the public as well as the officer who's writing the tickets, and use that as opposed to their personal unmarked vehicle. So that's another issue that's going to be brought to bear. Anyway, that's where we are, and we anticipate it's going to be an interesting trial.
Do you or your clients just have any issues? Obviously, this is just the public trust or anything like that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, when you say public trust, I mean, a lot of times in circumstances, individuals get caught up in situations where there are much more serious allegations made, and I don't want to harp on this to the detriment of those who are pleading guilty, but those cases involve writing false tickets, and that's not the situation here. And that's, in my mind, it's a much more egregious allegation than simply saying that somebody didn't work 4 hours. And another part of this is that state police allow individuals to take a break. They're allowed to take 45 minutes to an hour break during the regular shift and or this, during the airs. One of the things that, people don't want to talk about from the command staff is that there have been literally 10 different colonels and members of the department who had full access to information about what was or was not being done with the turnpike and this ticket writing process. And basically, what it is, it's the Turnpike Authority benefited by the amount of money that was written by the troopers. They were given roughly between $400,000 and $500,000 a year. The DOT and the Turnpike Authority gave that to the state police to write tickets. And this money generated in excess of probably $1.5 million above and beyond the $400,000 that they were given. So what you have is essentially a money quest. The Turnpike is looking for numbers, and that's why they were looking for what they refer to as the high rollers, people who were going 80 or 85 miles an hour, as opposed to somebody who's going 5 or 6 miles above the speed limit. So if you look at David Keefe's records, for instance, every single one of his tickets that he wrote is in excess if a person's going 84 miles an hour. And one of the things that they complained about was that you always had to have at least 10 tickets. They don't want to call it a quota, but the reality is it was a quota. And it didn't matter if it was done in 4 hours or 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. As long as those 10 tickets were written for the high rollers, the money was generated, there was no issue with anybody else what the timing was for them. So that's going to be part of an explanation that the jury's going to have to consider as well.
Do you expect additional charges from 2014?
No. Frankly, I was surprised they went to the extent of bringing these charges, but...
Can you give me a name, sir, for the tape?
Sorry?
Just your name, sir.
Timothy-Burke.